Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. We begin by praising Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Welcome everyone to the Wednesday night class. Tonight's topic is a really important one, and hopefully, what we'll be doing tonight is to start the discussion. And it's really about how our young people will navigate their future and how how they will be able to confront all the numerous challenges that they face and still come out as a practicing Islamic leader, contributing to society. The challenges are truly enormous. And when I think about it, it's really daunting. I know I myself, I have um, 13 grandchildren that I worry over. The eldest is 15 years of age. I know Riyadh has two sons. And so many of us sitting here tonight have young kids we're trying to raise up in this society. And so it really becomes an absolute priority for us to do as much as we can to help our young people to navigate all of these challenges. Tonight, we'll identify some of the arenas in which the young people participate in and what is the situation with it. We'll begin with a broad overview, and then we will go into specific categories of youth involvement in different areas. First thing that we need to know is that faith and identity are linked in the sense that we get our identity from our faith. Islam defines for us who we are. Our Lord, who created us, set down Islam, has defined who we are as persons and what is our role and purpose in the world. And so our identity must always be crafted from our faith, not from the latest fad, not from the latest, what is hip and cool. We now have this huge problem in the society of almost, 64 different kinds of identity, and humanity seems to be lost in trying to figure out who they are. And this is to confirm what Allah says in the Quran. وَلَا تَكُونُوا كَالَّذِينَ نَسُوا اللَّهَ فَأَنْسَاهُمْ أَنفُسَهُمْ أُولَٰئِكَ هُمُ الصَّادِقُونَ هُمُ الْفَاسِقُونَ. That and be not like those who forget Allah and then He calls them to forget themselves. And so when you forget Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, you really don't have any sense of who you are because it is Allah who defines who you are. And so, firstly, we need to know that our identity is linked to our religion. And Allah has defined for us what our religion is. Today, I have اليوم أكملت لكم دينكم وأتممت عليكم نعمتي ورضيت لكم الإسلام دينا. And today I've perfected your religion for you, and I've completed my favor upon you, and I've approved Islam as a religion for you, as a way of life. And so Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in the Quran defines what our religion is, Islam. And these are made very clear so that we don't have any ambiguity of who we are and any ambiguity of what we are about in terms of following in life. It is He who named you Muslims before and in this. And so that the messenger may be a witness over you and you may be a witness over the people. So Allah tells us what we should call ourselves, Muslims. He tells us what our religion is, Islam. He tells us that if we move away from that, we could forget who we are. And so we need to go in and help our young people who are struggling. A lot of times they are at an age, teenagers, for example, they're trying to define themselves. They're trying to define their place in the world. They're trying to figure out who they are, what they want to do with their life, what they want, what kind of future they want. And so they're in that process of searching and trying to figure out about life. And so we need to help them. Now, the Muslim youth experience in America is a very specific thing because American Muslims, they are very diverse and they continue to become even more diverse with every passing day. Almost every country in the world have Muslims from these countries of the world living in America. And so part of the reality of the young Muslims coming up is how to be able to live a life of a Muslim in a society that is American, society that based on values that are not Islamic per se, but they want to live a life of a Muslim. And so you become at odds with the society because things which Islam says you're not to do, the society said it's fine. For example, in this society, Islam is very much against, as a faith, we don't commit adultery and fornication. Whereas in this society, it's perfectly fine to do that and there's no consequences. And so this is part of the challenge that the young people have. And then coupled with that, we had an incident that occurred probably before most of them were born. Uh, it was happened on 9/11, I think 2001, in which the twin towers of the World Trade Center in Manhattan, planes flew into it, and it created a huge, huge problem. Almost 3,000 people died. And so Americans do not forgive this actually attack on their land, and they've begun from since then looking at Muslims as the problem and not as part of the solution. Before 9/11, Muslims were people who were admired. They were doctors and engineers and lived in the society, and they were seen as industrious and ambitious. All of that changed in 9/11, and we became looked at with suspicion, and discrimination continued against us. And so a lot of the young people, they're born into an incident that affects them even though they were never even alive at that time. The Muslim youth in America, they are trying to navigate many different things. Number one, as I mentioned, they're trying to figure out what does it mean to be an American Muslim? What does that define us as? How much pieces of America I need to absorb, how many pieces of Islam I need to mix together to produce for myself my unique identity in the society. 92% of the US Muslim youth that was questioned said they're proud to be American. 97% said they're proud of their Muslim identity. And 89% says they will, proudly embrace both identities. And so young people are asked to navigate both of these um, identities, and we need to understand that you don't necessarily have to choose one or the other. That you could be a practicing Muslim and still be a patriotic American. That the two does not dismiss each other or is opposite ends. The challenges facing by the Muslim youth is constantly what level of practice of Islam I need to have that will not cause me to make enough waves or cause people to come and attack me and bully me and harass me. How do I balance that? And this is a very difficult thing to do because our parents in many of the Muslim youth's homes not necessarily have the expertise or the qualifications of how to advise their children properly about all of this that happens. A lot of our parents did not grow up in an environment in which they're growing up in. Some of us did not even grow up in this country. And so our school days and our youthful days is a completely different world, alien to what the young people have now. And so it's very difficult for parents to give proper advice because they haven't experienced the level and the intensity of what our young people, when they go on that school bus and they go to school each day, what they have to go through to be able to make it through the day sometimes is difficult. And we have so many incidents that happen that creates problem for our young people. They may not come home and tell you a lot of times, but we as parents have to be vigilant and be mindful of this exists. Part of the problem is Islamophobia. A phobia is having a fear of something that has no basis in fact. It's just like an imaginary fear that you make up. you know. So if you have, for example, a phobia of Spider-Man, you know, then if you see a picture of Spider-Man, you start to get terrified. So a lot of people have a fear of Islam. They don't know why, they can't explain it, but because of the billions of dollars that are being spent to sell Islam as a violent, anti-society way of life, many people who get their news from the media begin to buy into that. And so they develop a hatred of Muslims without even knowing why. Chicago, they have this young kid. The landlord stabbed this 6 year old Muslim Palestinian kid 26 times. So this is the kind of level of hate that you have to be aware of. And young people, being young people, will always try to find a way to resist. And there's good news in that our young people are within the environment trying to find ways to make things happen. One of the way they resist is through art, poetry. You have groups like Muslim girls making change, and they do poetry, and they find different ways to express resistance to being treated the way they are. As I mentioned before, 9/11 really had a huge impact on the whole world, not only America, on the whole world. You know, um, so many things change at every level. From going to the airport, young people, you don't know, there was a time when you used to go to the airport and it was just a boring affair. You go, you pass through customs, nobody bothers you. You go on the plane, nobody bothers you. Used to be a world like that where it was like the most easiest thing to travel and nobody did do anything. The elder people will remember that, you know. But your world, where every time we go, we got to take off a shoe, we belt, you know, it's so, I mean, difficult. We got to go into poses, stand up, X-ray got to take out, and so many steps to just travel on a plane. And even when you are on the plane, you're scared to go to the bathroom as being looked at with suspicion and so on. So young people are trying to navigate all of that as they encounter this is their world. And so they need all the help that they can get as they try to navigate. Now, one of the most important part of a young person's life is family. The Prophet ﷺ said uh, that خيركم خيركم لأهلي وأنا خيركم لأهلي. The best of you are those who are best to their families, and I'm the best to my family. And so, family life in Islam is a big, big deal. It is where your foundation as a young person is formed. And so, the responsibility of moms and dads and aunts and uncles and grandmothers and grandfathers in terms of helping the next generation to come up as successful is in the family. So the family play a great deal of influence on lives of young people. And so the children that grows up in homes where Islamic values are lived not in an extreme way. I know one brother, and he brought up his kids very extreme. They had to go to masjid every single day. They had to do this, that, and then kids rebel. So you have to have a delicate balance in terms of how you are dealing with your children and trying to raise them with the understanding that they are also Americans, that they also have within them uh, attitudes that are American, behaviors that are American that they get from outside society, from the television, from the video games, from the social media. And so parents have a huge challenge of how to hand down those values to the young people without their feeling as if they are being trampled upon. When they did the research with the kids, they, the, the Muslim kids said that they think the non-Muslim parents are more cool and are more loving than their parents. Large number of them. They felt that their parents were not as loving to them as the non-Muslim parents are to their children because they allow their children to go everywhere. Muslim kids, you tell them you can't go dating, so they feel like they are being restricted of fun, free stuff, And so a lot of them, they grow up not really appreciating what their parents are doing for them, you know. So there needs to be good communication between parents and children. This is really very essential. All right. And we need to help parents to teach them what is it that they need to learn and do to help them as they navigate raising young people in this society who are grappling with all of these different challenges facing them. And so parents must recognize that they have a big role to play. In fact, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala placed that responsibility on the parents when He said, Ku anfusakum wa ahlikum nara. And He said to the parents, save yourself and your family from the hellfire. And so part of the responsibility of the parent is to raise pious children with good values. So part of one of doing ways of doing that is that parents have to institute systems. They have to institute routines that will help the child to absorb the Islamic values easily. If you notice a 3-year-old, for example, growing up in a home where the parents pray, that 3-year old, even though not knowing anything about prayer, will join the salah, will bow down with the parents, will stay there for the whole salah, and will grow up naturally seeing that as normal. So when you begin to practice the Islamic lifestyle in the home, the kids and the young people grow up seeing this as normal behavior. Not when you start too late, when the kid is already fixated on being Americanized and hating the religion, it's become very difficult to do that. And if your child has already hit 13 years of age, you're already too late. Because at 13, they begin to have their own minds. They begin to navigate for power. They begin to try to demand that they be treated like an adult. And so it becomes very difficult to parent them. Before 12 and earlier, you still have a chance, you know. And so in your homes, the parents need to practice praying together and make a big deal out of it. If your child prays all 5 salah in a particular day or a week, you reward them with something big so that they begin to see that this is what mom and dad gets them, to love me. If I pray all 5 daily salah, I fast half a day in Ramadan, so when the kids, the young people are connecting to the religion, parents need let the excitement on the parents' faces be seen. Let your children see it. Because children, they live to please their parents in their early age. Every drawing they make, they come, oh, mom, dad, look, I drew this. And they love to see the approval on the faces of the parents. And so we've got to be able to, don't ignore them. Child bring their drawing and says, hey, you're blocking the screen. They're about to score a touchdown. I'll talk to you later, and you push the child out of the way. And don't realize what you have done. Religious holidays should be a big deal. Engaging in charitable activities. Take your kids out. Project Downtown, whenever they are packing things at the masjid, and find opportunities to let your children be part of it. It will leave a lifetime of value in them. And then you need to have conversations in your home after Salat al-Maghrib or, 2 or 3 times a week. You sit down as a family and the father and the mother discuss things and help them to navigate their Islam. So a lot of the early preparation for children is in the parents' home. And so parents need to recognize that and make it the priority. Don't be working 60 hours a week when you have children 12 years and younger. This is the time that they need you. They need you to mold them, to fashion them. So even if you have to work for less money during that period, just to be available, to be in the life of your child, you will be well rewarded. When they come 13, you can go work for how much? You can work 80 hours a week, whatever it is, but you have formed that foundation which will never leave that child. And so it is important that we do that and understand that Allah does not give children to everybody. And so when you see you have been blessed with a child, you should see it as a great blessing and a great opportunity and a great responsibility that Allah has given you that will actually merit you to get Jannah. So you have to see it in this regard and put them as priority. The elderly and the children are the two most vulnerable people, as we mentioned before. And then we have huge gaps with our children and our parents as the children try to navigate. Because part of what happens, we still are of a generation where, uh, except for the African American Muslims who grew up here and their parents grew up here and they have a generation from slavery coming all the way up. A lot of the Asian and Caribbean and other Muslims who have migrated to America, they still belong to families where dad grew up in one country and the kids are growing up in the next country. And that creates unique problems. You know, I remember when, because I grew up in like British Guyana, and British English is a little bit different from American English. Even some words are different. You know, like for example, spectacles and glasses, garbage and dustbin, flashlight, torchlight. There's so many words that we refer to different. So I remember I used to have to ask my kids, how do you say this in American? How do you say this word? And they would look at me a little funny because I'm saying it, schedule and schedule and all of this. And I would try to learn from them how to pronounce it in an American accent, in American voice, in American. So parents learn from their children in this process. And so this gap exists. Uh, and so we've got to be able to recognize it, and be able to deal with it. Cultural differences. Our parents of the young people, a lot of time, if you grow up in a different country, your cultural preferences are very different from American preferences. I remember my young son. We're trying to get him to eat Guyanese food, but for some reason it just didn't make sense to him because he grew up eating American food. And when we brought Guyanese dishes to him, he was like, nah, that don't look appealing at all. I love pizza, macaroni and cheese, and they have the American dishes. So even the cuisine, even the cultural norms, even the cultural emphasis of what we would consider very important, they said it doesn't matter. This is like irrelevant to us. And so that tension and that struggle continue to exist while that young person is trying to find their identity. So not only are they trying to identify with being an American, not only are they trying to identify with being a religious Muslim, they also now have a third factor. They have to also identify with the culture of their parents because they are a product of that culture. So they're trying to navigate three different things and have their identity be part of all three things. And that's an extraordinary burden to place on a young person. How do I become a Guyanese American Muslim? Now I have three identity, that I have to navigate. And so we should not underestimate what this does to our children. Created schizophrenic, dual personality, you know, hypocrisy, so many things happen. So the child behaves in the masjid like a Muslim, he behaves like an American in a school, and then he behaves like a cultural icon in his parents' home. And so they're navigating three different ways of living, and that messes them up psychologically in so many ways. Right? So, and we have also technological gap because within the parents' lifetime and our lifetime, technology has moved so fast that there's a huge gap between what the parents were accustomed to compared to what their children are accustomed to. And a lot of parents, they are trying to make ends meet. They have very limited understanding of Islam. They are not scholars and they are so busy trying to pay the rent. They don't have an Islamic environment that they can go. A lot of the masjid sometimes there's so much politics. They don't feel comfortable. And so we end up with this challenge of navigating that as well. And so the Muslim community have to play the greatest role to help with that. Um, so that's a family. Then the kids go to school. They also have to navigate school life. And when you go to school, they have choice of either going to Islamic school or going to a non-Islamic school, regular school. And for most Muslim parents, the going to an Islamic school is very expensive. A lot of them cannot afford it. And so most of the kids that of the Muslims go to the regular academic school. And so there when they go, they face many challenges as well. Because now they have to navigate non-Muslim friends. You know, um, they have to endure bullying. Uh, they have to endure people looking at their religion as being second class, as being downtrodden, harassing women and all of that. A lot of the girls, for example, they're terrified. They don't want to wear a hijab. They don't want to tell people they're Muslims because of fear of pressure and insults and discrimination. And so our young people, find it very difficult. And the teachers don't help. The teachers themselves participate in discriminating against Muslims, because they have their own personal biases. I've had many situations in my lifetime when that happened, in which you're depending on the teacher to provide protection and safety for your child in the class. The teacher is the biggest bully and the biggest perpetrator of harassing the Muslim kids. So that's also part of the difficulty young people have in trying to grow up in an environment where it's kind of like almost hostile to them in a lot of ways. Right? The media is another area that we grew up with. The media continues to represent Muslims as the problem in the society. You know, the media. So one last thing on the school is that we as parents, you have to be able to engage with the principal of your school from very early. I remember my daughter have so many skirmishes and you know issues with principal that she's had to go there and address. My daughter has 6 children, so she's constantly fighting battles with simple things. For example, on the wall, they put every child was supposed to bring a doll from their culture. And so on the whole wall is full of dolls with every single culture from where you come from, your country and different things. Of course, except the Muslim doll. And so granddaughter, my daughter made a Muslim doll and said, take it to your teacher and ask her if she can put it up on the wall with the others because this is your culture. And when she went, they made a fuss about it. Said the wall is filled. We can't add any more dolls and start to make nonsense excuses. So those are the kind of things you get. Simple things, from simple to complicated things that you battle every day with the school. In terms of the media, you know, um, if a Christian person go and steal or murder someone, the media doesn't report it as being a Christian person. They just said there's a man who went down there and he killed 50 people. We don't know his religion. We don't know nothing. If it's a Muslim that does it, half of that, the word Muslim is also mentioned about that person. There was a Muslim young lady who went and did that. A Muslim young man. So they always deliberately highlight the Muslims whenever there's a negative report to be done. Muslims' name get attached to it. When it's other, no. If someone does a terrorist act and he's not a Muslim, sometimes you hear, oh, he had mental health problems, that's why he did it. As soon as a Muslim, terrorism, and gets associated with it. So this is part of the media's bias in trying to promote an agenda of hatred, of keeping Muslims down, of creating fear against Muslims. And it's very obvious. We have many Muslim groups who have monitored these things, right? And it has an impact on our young people. because when they look at the television, they never see Muslims in good light. And so eventually they begin to question themselves, whether Islam is really, a wonderful thing. Because constantly in the media, they're only seeing, and this is not helped when we look at the Middle East and we see all of these uh, ridiculous conflicts. Even Muslims using ayats of the Quran and in the name of Islam, killing civilians and responding to different ways, un-Islamic things under the name of Islam. And of course, the media promotes and highlights that whenever it happens. So young people get influenced by this a lot. But the most influence that young people have is in social media. That's where their world lives. That's where they are at. You know, so the Muslims, the young people, are fighting back against both the media by using social media. Right. So whatever they see in the media, they have an avenue. They have a vehicle that no one can control, and that is social media. And so we find the young people, they get their news from social media, they respond on social media, they deal with their issues on social media, they, they use this as a place to provide expression for them, to fight back, to defend themselves, to advocate for their causes. And so the young Muslims have become super smart at using social media and all its platforms, you know, and this is something which they see as a way of offsetting and at least fighting for their cause, fighting for their identity, fighting for their Muslimness, as and so they have taken to Facebook, they've taken to YouTube, Instagram, TikTok, in almost every avenue, and so you will find more than most other young people, the Muslim youth are online perhaps more than any other group because this is their only avenue to really voice their issues. And so they are there, they make a big presence, they produce an enormous amount of content, and they push back, as a way of, but the cost of that is really big because as they have to spend so much time on social media, it affects the other areas of their life, because when you are on social media, you feel you have your friends on social media. I have so much Facebook friends and so on. It takes them away from actually socializing physically, of actually going out into the playground, going on Friday nights and play sports. And, so you find that the Muslim youth, they're not as engaged with going out physically, interacting physically. And actually, it creates a kind of a nerd effect where they're incapable to socialize properly in a society. And it will affect them when they go on jobs and different places when they do have to go and engage with the society. So while they're doing an amazing job of doing this, it has its effect in terms of um, depriving them from actually going out and living life physically out there in the society. Islamophobia is also it's an agenda that the young people they are unfortunately being targeted. And did I do the modern world, sorry. So worldwide, Muslim youths, not only in America, they face challenges, right? All over the world. Because whatever emanates from the States usually tend to trickle down to third world or so-called third world countries as well. You know, um, and as I said, the big issue for young people is balancing faith with culture, with religion. And this is really a big, big, big ongoing challenge. And a lot of times the Muslim youth go to the masjid and it's not a pleasant experience, because when a Muslim, you go to the masjid is a place of reverence. And the imam is a person who is pious and has a sense of reverence. And then suddenly, so you see a young person walk in with tattoos and his hair all disheveled. He doesn't even his pants halfway down his knees, and he comes into the masjid, and somebody will tell him something, and you create now this problem where this young man may never come back. And so this is a challenge all over the world in terms of how to navigate to get our young people to be raised with good respect for culture, understanding their role as Americans and as righteous Muslims who are trying to fulfill the role that Allah has designed for them. And so this is very, very difficult. Most of the times, the Muslim youth have dual identity. They are engaged in civic engagement. That's another problem. Because when you're an immigrant, you don't care to be involved in the society, in civic activities. Because a lot of immigrants, they're either running from oppressive governments, who have made their lives miserable, or economic hardship that was caused by their governments that caused them to leave their homes. So when they come to America now, they don't have any desire to be involved with anything government, anything civic, anything with society, because they came from societies that treated them harshly and caused them to run from their homeland. And so when they come, they don't get involved in those issues. Secondly, as a way to protect themselves, they're terrified to get involved in the wider society because they feel if wider society will change them and will dilute their culture and dilute their religion. And so they keep away and they live in cocoons and bubbles and ghettos among themselves, terrified to get involved and connecting with the wider society. But they are raising children who are American, bona fide Americans, who is as willing and very want to engage in the civic activities of the society. And so parents now have this big problem with their children. Children want to go out there and march. They want to go out there and build a bridge. They want to go out there and advocate for social justice and all of that. In the universities, they want to go and protest for Palestine. And the parents are terrified, of what is going to happen to the children when they do that. And so that's usually a huge challenge for parents and for young people in navigating that. So a lot of them end up with this very difficult identity, not clear cut identity, this dual messed up identity. Islamophobia is one of those things which millions of dollars, as we mentioned before, is spent to try to convince people that Muslims are a problem, that we are the problem in the society, and that Islam is a religion of war and of hatred and of discrimination and of oppressing women and all the stuff that we see Islamophobia does. And so the young people, they have to spend a large amount of their time in defensive postures, keep defending themselves because they're getting accused all the time of being different, of being weird, of being fanatical, of being extremists. And so a lot of the young Muslims, they're spending all their time just trying to defend their position, trying to explain themselves. And that is not good and healthy for them. So Islamophobia, which is rising and continues to rise at an alarming rate. You know, After 9/11, the FBI said they had about 481 cases. In less than 1 year, it went up to 2,000. So you have so much cases now. There's thousand. CARE, for example, this year they had 8,000 cases of discrimination and harassment against Muslims. And so this continues to rise. There's a lot of money being spent. If you want to make money, you go and criticize Islam, write a book against Islam, and you will see funds coming and pouring in from all kinds of sources because there's an agenda to promote that. The other area where the Muslim youth get interacted with is community. You know, we are part of a community. We're trying to build Muslim communities. We're trying to build Communities everywhere in America build masjids and create communities around those masjids and Islamic centers and so on. And so we want to use those centers and those initiatives to have our young people have a safe space where they can come without any discrimination. They can come and have the power and the freedom to bring their programs and their activities and their religion and have a place to be able to establish that. And so the community needs to be much more uh, championing the causes of the young people than we are. A lot of time, the Islamic masjids and centers, they're set up mainly to pray and to establish some educational social activities, but they are not designed to be youth centers. They're not designed with the youth in mind. The youth is usually an appendix. We build a basketball court over here and we say, hey, that's it for you young people. It's not created with this idea that this would be the safe space for the Muslim youth. And we need to create within the venue itself, designed to facilitate getting young Muslims to feel comfortable coming there and desirous of coming there by the kind of activities we have revolving around them. And that was probably the only oasis that the Muslim youth has, that they should feel comfortable. At least I can go there and, de-stress myself. I can go there and connect with my Lord, meet my friends, play some games, and have a beautiful space. The young people also have taken initiatives as part, those pious young people, the activist young Muslims, did not just sit down and say, I'm going to save myself. They are also engaged in creating organizations and spaces for other Muslim youth to participate. And so there's a lot of youth led initiatives revolving around masjids and also national organizations. There is a national sports day that Muslim young people from all over the country come and they compete with each other. So they have become very good advocates of themselves in trying to bring Muslim youth together in a beautiful atmosphere where they can practice their Islam, they can compete with each other, they bring out the best of each other. YM, Mina, and so many of them exist. Um, and they have their problems, but at least they are there and they are playing a very important role in helping parents to find a place or a space that they can send their children to, that they can go. A lot of the masjids also offer weekend Islamic school known as madrasa. And we want to take back our term because, there are terminologies that we have always in our religion, but we have allowed those people who attack Islam to misunderstand our words. And so now you're scared to use the word jihad. You're scared to use the word madrasa, because it has a different connotation now. We have made madrasa into an extremist uh, program run by extremist imams in the masjid. No, madrasa means school. It has always been part of our vocabulary, part of our, culture. And so we should not let them just cause us to shy away from our words because they have a different understanding or they've created a pressure that when you say madrasa, it connotes that we have to win back that battle. It says, no, it means school. It's a regular school. And so um, I like what the young people are doing as they're finding their identity and they're organizing their activities and programs and they're learning from each other and they're trying to instill those values of Islam. This is an important experiment, and we should support youth groups who take the initiative to do this and make sure we provide sufficient resources to them. A lot of time in the masjids, and I for years asked masjid, you know, um, do you have on your agenda something that says, or allocated in your budget some money that is exclusively for youth and youth development and youth programs and youth initiatives? None of the masjid, as I have checked, put aside anything in their budget to do that. And if these are the most important people for our future, Because the most valuable resource in the world is the Muslim youth. And so you don't have any money or allocate anything in your budget to give, to promote, to encourage the Muslim youth in the masjids. You know, funds to buy pizza, funds to be able to buy prizes when you have competition, funds to be able to, take them out on trips and outings. Then how are we really supporting the young people? So we've got to think differently in a lot of the Muslim community and how they have to help the young people to be able to create those beautiful places. And then there is interfaith, the faith dialogue. The Muslim youth are involved in a lot of this. They give dawah. They have MSAs. They set up tables in the universities. Non-Muslims come. They invite them to Islam. So they are online also with many, many different online groups that they try to share Islam and spread Islam and to clarify what Muslims are and help to counter the stereotypes, that exist within the Muslim situation. There needs to be developed, a lot of things in terms of interfaith. What interfaith does is it provides a setting for it should really technically be an interfaith setting should be a place where we go to invite people to Islam. It has become a place where a lot of imams don't like to participate in it for this reason. In that they say we go there, we pick a topic, women in Islam, women in Christianity, women in Judaism. And all that happens is each group gives their position. This is what Jews say about women, this is what Muslims say about women, and what Christians say about women. And so the Imam says it kind of like allow people to feel that they're equal and on par. That the Jewish position is valid, the Christian position is valid, the Muslim position is valid. Whereas, as far as the Imam is concerned, there's only one truth, and that Islam's position is the valid position, and the Jewish position, and the Christian position, and the atheist position are not true, are not valid. But when you go into interfaith, decorum demands that you can't criticize the way it's organized and orchestrated. You can't criticize the other's view. And so for a lot of imams, that's like a waste of time. I want to be able to go there and have a discussion and be able to challenge each other's views. It says, okay, in Christianity, you say this about a woman. I would like to find out about that. And you could challenge me as well. Most interfaith groups doesn't, or setting does not allow that. Each group presents its position, and then people ask questions from the audience, and that's it. And so it is one of those things which a lot of Muslims feel, it is just a waste of time. But what it does do, and what is important about it, is that it allows Muslims to clarify and to fight back against all the stereotypes, all the attacks from media, all the attacks from Islamophobic activities. You get a chance to sit in a forum and have non-Muslims sitting there without anything and listen to a Muslim give the position of their faith from their worldview. And so it was perhaps the only time that they will actually hear what Islam is from an actual Muslim and how Muslims rationalize and understand their faith. So interfaith dialogue have this benefit of being able to fight back against and to be able to show Islam. It also helps the young Muslims sitting there listening to the interfaith to feel a pride in their religion, to feel, yes, I was not able to explain it, but the Imam up there, he has provided me with the weaponry, the arguments that I need. I know it's right, but I don't have the words to defend it. Now I am able to understand how I should explain this and how I should defend it. And so the interfaith dialogue also allows the non-Muslims to see Muslims as people and not objects of destruction. They're able to break tea and break bread and eat and interact and have casual discussion with Muslims. And it helps them to really meet a Muslim. When they did the Pew Research Center research 10 years ago, over 65% of non-Muslims never met a Muslim in their life. And so the interfaith dialogue provides that opportunity. Some of them will be there the first time they've ever spoken to an actual Muslim. And the research show every time those who hated Islam interacted with a Muslim physically, their, their bigotry dropped 10%. Their opinion of Islam dropped from negative to positive. Because when they meet a Muslim and see his humility, his warmth, his friendliness, his hospitality, their opinion of Muslims change. And so it does have a role to play. And so we have got to be able to, inshallah, all of this affects our young people. And I make dua every day for the young people, asking Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to help them to navigate all of this stuff. And out of this maze, still find a way to become strong believers in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. But I don't think they can do it alone. All the adults, whether you have children or not, whether you have grandchildren or not, we need to see this as an investment all of us have to partake in, because the future of Muslims in this country rests with the young people. And if we don't invest in them today, we're going to lose them tomorrow. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala help us and help them to grow up to be beautiful people. And we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to give extra strength and blessings to the parents who are raising them, and to give them the patience and the faith and the knowledge and the foresight to do right by these young people. You know, Allah says in the Quran, رَبَّنَا هَبْ لَنَا مِنْ أَزْوَاجِنَا وَذُرِّيَّاتِنَا قُرَّةَ أَعْيُنٍ وَجَعَلْنَا لِلْمُتَّقِينَ إِمَامًا. He says, He taught us this prayer to make to Him. He said, Oh my Lord, oh Allah, give us spouses and offsprings that will be the coolness of our eyes and will make us leaders of the righteous. So Allah is telling us, ask Him, coolness of the eyes, that when you see your children, when you see a spouse, your eyes become cool. And that's a big thing in a desert with hot heat and wind bothering your eyes all the time. So may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala protect our youth and make us all committed to help them wherever we are. Every young person counts. We are only getting about 10% of them right now. 90% are lost right now. So may Allah help us to improve the numbers of that. Assalamu alaikum.